Hi there. Let's do a Carlton Witch Ramble involving my spreadsheet and the renowned, always talked about Carlton team of 1995. So, of course, I needed to know. I needed to know what their energies were. I needed to know how that compares to the 2025 team. And I thought I would share it with you. So, I'm going to pop myself down in the tiny, tiny bottom of this because the spreadsheet is quite big today. So, let's see. Now you'll notice that I've got the coaches along the top. Okay. So we'll come back to them because we need to kind of go through the energies of the team first. But just as a very quick look, we can see we have Michael Voss, emotional sponge, and we have David over here, intellectual, hard worker, detail oriented. It is also worth noting that Virgo energy coach, Collingwood has a Virgo energy coach. I've been known to ramble about how Virgo energy coaches are very helpful for teams that have a lot of big energy. So just keep that in mind. Now, when we have a look at the teams here, I think it's worth noting that the 1995 team didn't have any Aquarius energy. And I'm always talking about how I think that that's a particularly interesting energy and very important to the AFL. Now, that is particularly important because of where we are right now at a point in time. And Aquarius energy from November last year is the energy of power now. When we were dealing with the 1995 team, the energies of power were Scorpio and Sagittarius. Okay. So very different there. But Aquarius energy is very important to sports. And even though we're not seeing any up here in the top, we can see it scattered throughout. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick rundown and really notice these light blue colors and how many are in that 1995 team. Okay. Now, those light blue, as you can see down here, they did have an Aquarius, Peter Turner, but he did not play in 1995. Okay, so here we go. Let's start at the top here. And first off, we're noticing there are no Aquarius energies. Okay. So we're going to move into this Aries energy, right? This fire energy, particularly important for the AFL, in my opinion. Now, we have Lockie Fogarty with the fire and then the intuitive, illogical kind of communication. Whereas the 1995 has got two. So we can see here that the motivation style and the aggression style over here on this team is much more fiery versus our Aries players over here with intense and emotional and hard worker, but needs to put on a show. Okay. Ashton has the best energy out of all of the Aries energy people on the 2025 team. But over here, all of these people, because see, they might, run their whole system on fire, but they're very intuitive with how they lock into each other. Okay. And if they're not intuitive, they're very direct. Right. And then how they use their masculine energy is in fire, is in being a little bit of a pushy kind of player, or they're very fucking fast. Right. And these inner belief systems, Luke O'Sullivan, very fucking resourceful. Like, even though there is a self-centered to that, there is this fear of failure, right? And because this power and fear is this fear of being judged, that really lifts up the rest of this energy to make him take charge of his life. Okay. And it's the same with this one up here. Like Mil Hannah, he might have this anxious kind of needs to feel in control, but because he has this fear of being judged, he will be in control and he will take control of his life. Okay. So these Aries players are different to the ones that we have here, especially Lockie Fogarty, okay, who becomes very emotional towards the end here. I'd say, we've got Ron over here and we've got Ashton, very similar energies to me, okay, very similar. So these last three up here, the inner belief system, the power and the fear, and the childhood wound are somewhat generational. And so you can really notice that especially power and fear and childhood wound, they are not similar really across these two 30-year gap of a team. And this inner belief system, that really comes from how we experience our father, is one of the ways that that really comes from, like the father energies around us. And so very generational, okay? Very generational. We do have some the same, but it is a very generational kind of experience, all right? Now, as I said in my last video, the purple energy is the big problem for Carlton because The 2025 team, as far as I'm concerned, had far too much of it, okay? And so we can see here that even though the 1995 team had that emotional sponge energy, it hasn't gone across into all of the mindsets. Yes, it has up here for Andrew McKay, okay? But these ones, no. And this is almost the opposite kind of energy here. So this communication style, it is very egoic. It's very direct. It does require validation, but it doesn't really fuck around, okay? But over here, we've got all these communicators that are stubborn and careful and emotional, right? And then when we come over here into this motivation style, we have very rebellious and unconventional. We have got this fiery and start shit. We've got one passive aggressive, and that's it. Like the rest of this is all fire and movement, and we're not stuck in emotions. Whereas when we're over here, we definitely are. Like with Sam Walsh has got a lot of emotions coming in here. And this one, a lot of emotions. I mean, Adam Sard is probably the best one, okay? Because he does have this very fast motivation and aggression style, right? But all this purple compared to this purple, like if we're just going to go simple and off colors, okay? So then we come into the Capricorn, the hard worker energies, similar, but we have one extra, right? We got one extra playing over here. And I mean, can we even compare with some of these? Like, just, and I wasn't aware, I didn't watch back then. I've gone back and watched some highlights from the 1995 team, and, these people absolutely are within this energy. Okay. So very and Christo, right? Hard worker, very protective kind of energy, very blunt. This is like quite a similar energy, if you can notice here, quite a similar energy to Ollie Hollands, right? So hard worker, they've got the similar placement there, similar placement there, right? They've got the similar motivation and aggression. And where they shift is this inner belief system. Okay. So we've got Ange Christo up here being very fucking stubborn about it with his inner belief system. He does need a little bit of stability with what he's doing, but he will put in a lot of hard work because of it. Okay. And over here, Ollie Hollands, his inner belief system needs a bit more nurturing. So still stubborn in a way because it does hate rules, but it does have a lot of more of an emotional kind of connection to it. And then very kind of similar in the wound placement there, in the power and fear and the childhood wound. They can kind of show up in the same way of like really needing to fight to be seen, right? Now, Anthony Koutoufides, I mean, I think that reads as exactly who he was. Now, remembering here this wound of identity, this usually presents as like constantly changing up who you are or locking in a certain persona. Whether you feel that way on the inside is another story, all right? So we have these hard workers, very blunt with their communication, which is great for AFL. We've got these like motivational styles here that are very fast or very fiery, which we do have over here. Okay, it's these inner belief systems that really make the shift here, and just this mindset over here of Ben Harrison and Adam White, who we can see played a lot of fucking games, right? Played a lot of games. Yeah, so I mean, the Capricorns in whatever team, right? It doesn't matter what team you're looking at. The Capricorn energies, they will always be the hardworking energies. They will always be the ones that really fucking lock in. And so both of the energies are very much the same. Harry's probably the most different, really, the most different here. And that's because his motivation style is that rebellious style, and that can be really difficult, especially when you are this hard worker kind of energy and you don't really like change. Okay. Like it's like your system is constantly having this little battle. All right. Now we get to the very fucking interesting part. And for anyone who has ever had a crack at me about saying, oh, we need more Geminis, you shut your little mouths, my friends. Look at this. You see the fucking problem? You see the problem, okay? The energies that we are lacking, well, we were lacking, right, in 2025, Gemini and Leo. Very fast, very creative, very fiery, very able to think on their feet, right? And then when we come over to the 1995 team, call me not shocked or surprised when I'm seeing this, okay? When I'm seeing this, right? And, played 24 games, played 23 games, played 25 games. These ones a little bit less in the middle, but like these are a lot of games to be playing, okay? And this Gemini energy, very fast, very fast, right? And not only are these Gemini people very fast, but their communication style is also incredibly fast. Their mindset, the way their brain works, is incredible. Is incredible. So these energies are so important. So, and we all know how people felt about, players like Steven Silvani, and this is why, okay? Now, Steven Silvani, not a bit of a fighter. He is a bit like someone who has to be a bit pushed, but it's not somebody who you would want to fucking push, right? Because these these energies, these fast mind, surface level kind of ego self Gemini energies, they are information collectors. So when you have this motivation style, right, passive and less pushed, you better believe that if you're pushing them, they've collected a lot of information and they know how to push back. Okay. Now, Stephen Silvani, fear of failure, right? So that shows up in being very fucking hardworking. And especially because the power of this generation was very good at building habits, like incredibly good at building habits and didn't want to be judged, right? A lot of these people would have had fathers that were very, very, very fiery and direct. So their fear of judgment generally will come from that, right? When we can see all of this very fast, very able to pivot kind of energy, it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. And, we've only got Pitto in 2025. We only had Pitto, whose motivation style is hardworking. But when we come over here, we've got these red ones as well, right? So the red ones are fire. So their motivation style is very assertive and is very fiery. Okay. And this light blue is very rebellious, right? So though all of those energies coming together, very fucking important. And then when we come down to here, we only had Frankie Evans, who only played 9 games, right? And then we look at this 1995 team, 24, 23, 18 games, right? And here we are again, Scott Camporelli. And I mean, people talk about him for a reason. Like, this is a very creative and confident, fiery energy that all three of these men had, right? Now, these two came with a very analytical mind, and this one came with a lot of fucking ego in the way that he communicates, right? So he communicates like someone who knows he's fucking right. So the level of confidence in Scott Camporelli is huge, right? And then these two, very analytical. One has this very assertive motivation style, and one is very rebellious, right? Now, these wounds are all the same. It does make them kind of really show up loudly with who they are, and it will be dependent on a number of other placements in the chart, which we don't have here. But these energies are very important. This creative, confident energy, it really can run through the whole entire team. It really can. And it really can give a lift when it's needed, right? Now, as I mentioned in my other video about the Carlton energy, there's too much of this going on. Like, these energies here, these passive balanced energies, this is far too much, especially when it comes with the purple, when it comes with the emotions, okay, or the diplomatic. This is not high value for AFL as far as I'm concerned. They're surely nice people, great people, but they just don't, apart from Mitch McGovern, they just don't really have that extra kind of push, right? And we can see over here, oh, we've noticed that. We've got two. Okay, we've got two, and these two, they've got a little bit of emotion, but their emotion is coming through their motivation, right? So kind of like over here. But the difference being, like, Blake Acres and Craig Bradley, kind of similar, very similar energies, okay? Very similar. But Greg Williams, this analytical kind of mindset really changes this passiveness, right? Because there's a practicality to it. So it does want to, like, find proof for whatever this passive kind of energy is in the ego self, okay? But we didn't overdo it, right? We're not too balanced and passive. And then the Pisces energy, which is particularly interesting because for the 1995 generation, that was also their wounding, right? Their wounding around faith and trust. And generally, they'll have experienced some kind of trauma, or their family, mother or father, would have experienced a lot of trauma. And so, having all of this Pisces energy does sort of hit a little bit different when we've got the woundings also over here. So, we can see here, all right, we had Crips Lord White Cottrell, right? But over here we've got these guys, right? And we can see a little bit similar here in the communication and mindset. We've got a couple there. We do have these very unconventional communication and mindsets, right? Which does make a huge difference because it adds logic to something that's generally not very logical. Okay. And it does help communicate what it is that you want. Then this is particularly interesting to me, like these two very humble, goal orientated motivation styles, right? Whereas when we come over here, we've got Cripper with a bit of an assertive but somewhat dramatic. We've got, fiery and lights to shut. We do have some over there, but these are particularly important, right? This humble energy is the opposite energy to these purples. And so it helps balance out that extra emotion, okay? And especially when you have your communication either direct or a bit, in the light blue, a bit more kind of unconventional, but a bit more logic based, that definitely helps, okay? Having goals, goal orientated motivation style helps with this kind of emotional energy as well. So, another big difference is this direct fire committed energy. Now, the problem with the 2025 Carlton team is I think we very clearly had too much of that. Okay. Because this direct fire, this kind of committed energy, it's also really fucking righteous about what it knows. And dependent on the rest of the energies within the chart, it can be a little bit childish. It can be someone who is not very open to other people's ideas and thoughts and opinions, okay? Which is not going to work when you're in a team sport, okay? And so, like, far too many, like, double and then some, right? And then if you look over here with the ones they did have, Barry played 13 games, Matthew and Simon 2 and 4. This was most of our fucking team, right? These people who are very, very sure that they are correct. And so then we get this blunt, fiery, right, controlled. So these Sagittarius people over in the 1995 team are just not oversaturated. So they tend to bring a little bit less of like that know-it-all energy and like that not wanting to listen energy, which I think we have seen that some of these players definitely had. Another thing worth noting, what's missing? Purple, Scorpio energy. Scorpio energy, I find, is one of the most difficult ones to fit within most of the AFL teams, but especially Carlton, right? Because Carlton are a Taurus energy team, and Taurus energy sits on the same axis as Scorpio, but down the other fucking end. So they are opposing energies. And Scorpio energy is very untrusting. It's very absorbent to emotional situations. Like it sucks in feelings that other people are having, that situations around them are causing in regards to guilt and shame and being deceitful. And that is not the sort of energy that a team like Carlton, who like to keep all of their secrets inside, it's not a very good energy. It does not match up. And I think you could say, without even questioning it, that these three players, Billy Wilson, Jackson Binns, and Jesse Motlop, they do seem very different to the rest of the team. Okay. Now, we didn't have no Scorpios in 1995, not a one. Okay. Only a little bit of Scorpio energy seen throughout it, right? Literally. But like, not very much. Not very much. So then we go into the Taurus. Now, Taurus, like I was just saying, that is the overall energy of the Carlton team. It's very fucking stubborn. Like, it's incredibly stubborn. To get it to change its mind is really difficult. Okay. And so they only had the two, right? Played 9 games, played 6 games. However, they have this more cheeky kind of communication style, right? So we had Harry O'Farrell, very similar, but this stubborn direct communication when you're already stubborn, right? It makes you really fucking stubborn. And like that's not always great. And so over here we have a direct kind of cheekiness, and then we have this motivation style that's a bit passive. So it really doesn't hammer down the stubbornness here, right? It's a little bit more open especially within like masculine energy relationships, it's a little bit more open to hearing your opinion. And because it's got this fear of failure, part of that kind of wants to hear what you've got to say because just in case it needs to know it. It doesn't trust anyone, so it does want to listen as well, but it also doesn't want to be judged, right? It wants to be part of the team. And so that really helps. Which is a funny thing to say, that the childhood wound and the power and the fear really helps with this stubbornness. But down here, this is too much stubbornness, right? And then Virgos, okay, we had Zach Orazio and Jordan Boyd. And over here, we only had these two, right? And Virgos are very important. They put puzzle pieces together. They see things that other people can't see. They're very analytical, right? Especially Adrian, very analytical, okay? And moves with that, with a similar kind of very mind-based motivation and aggression style, okay? Probably comes from a bit of trauma, right? But that helps. That helps with this, the rest of this energy, because the rest of this energy is a very service related energy, right? So it has this understanding that it has to be of service. These players did not play in 1995. So they had one Aquarius, one Taurus, one Leo, and a couple of Capricorns that didn't play in 1995. But again, you see there's no purple in there, my friends. Not a single one, right? We had these people not playing, right? Couple of Capricorns, we had like one Cancer energy not playing, but overall, the energy difference is huge when it comes to emotional energy and stubborn energy versus something that's a little bit more able to pivot, a little bit more collective focused. So, Carlton, if you're watching this, this is why. You talk about the 1995 team like it's, you know, let's hold it up forever, like holding the gold medal. But yet, what have you actually looked at? And why did it work? Now, let's quickly just touch on the coaches because I think that's particularly important, especially with the types of teams that we have. Now, it is absolutely not a fucking coincidence that Michael Voss is a Cancer energied person of the Carlton team that has been drowning in emotions. Right? Right. Okay. So Cancer energy finds a huge difficulty in being disciplined, right? While at the same time, it is very stubborn in what it believes. Okay. So he's the emotional sponge, which is just a rough energy to be in for the Carlton team, especially in 2025 when we had all of the emotional, secretive nonsense going on. So he's absorbing energy from literally everywhere around him, right? And the coach is in the offices and on the grass. So he's taking the emotions from the offices, from the internal Carlton, he's taking it from there and he's giving it to the players. Right, who are then in turn giving it to each other, and then they're in turn giving it to the crowd, right? So he is definitely a piece of the puzzle in this emotional sponge energy. Now, he is saved because he does have a bit of a hard worker motivation style, and he does have a good communication style, right? Very fast, a little bit manipulative, to be honest. So he is kind of able to, absorb somebody's emotions and tell them what they need to hear, right? Like tell them what he needs them to know, but in a way that is somewhat manipulative, like he knows he can get the point across. And, he has this very soft inner belief system, right? He understands like emotions and like not all men do that, right? Like not all, especially like men born when he was born. So that's particularly interesting. He would feel like he can help and be a voice for people who can't fight their own fights. But he does have this childhood wound of faith and trust. So trust is really important to him. Breaking his trust, I don't think he would come back from that because Cancer energy people, I think, are the biggest grudge holders. They won't tell you, but they will hold a grudge. And you will know about it in little slight kind of things that they do and say, but they're not going to come out and say it. They're just not. And then we look over at David, who was coaching in 1991 to 2000, right? Now, there's a couple of things that are particularly important when you remember the rest of the chart being a lot of fire, being a lot of fast-brained people, right? Now, a Cancer energy is an emotional sponge. A Virgo energy is a grounded earth sign, right? It's very detail orientated. It works hard. It leads by example in that it's quite an intellectual energy. And when you have some of these big energies and this is why it works for Collingwood, when you have all of this fire and all of this air and all of this fire, okay, You need somebody who can put those pieces where they need to go. And that is what a Virgo energy can do, right? Now, especially because he has a similar energy over here in his motivation style, very grounded, very goal orientated, very critical of the details, right? This isn't somebody who goes, you played like shit. This is somebody who'll say, hey, at 17 minutes into the first half, you did this. You should have done this. And if you'd done that, we would have hit the goal. Right. So this is not someone who is like, I'm looking at everything and I'm going, oh, hey, you could have done better. No, this is somebody who will tell you exactly what you did and exactly how you could have done better. This is where the diplomatic, harmonious communication style comes in perfectly. This is not something you really want seen in anywhere within the team, right? You don't really want it fucking anywhere, okay? And we don't really have it fucking anywhere. And look, we don't really have a lot of it over here on this side either because, look, it's not great. Okay, it's not great. Anyone who's in any sort of leadership kind of position within the team, terrible. You need to be able to tell someone directly. So, this is actually great for this energy team because there's some big egos in that 1995 team. So, if you were to come in and tell them that they played like shit, that would not have gone down very well. So, the fact that this is someone who comes in who notices the details, who remembers the goal, and is critical of what you could have done better to achieve that goal in a very detailed way. That is how you deal with big egoed people. This inner belief system, it does mean that he has experienced a lot of masculine energy growing up that was somewhat fast moving, not emotional, but it gives him this ability to kind of understand people in their dark and their light, which is very helpful. Now, this power and fear is also very helpful for someone who's in a coaching position because even though it comes with this focus on self, and even though we focused on ourself and our honor and our pride, and that's what I mean by he leads by example, that this one of the fears is power that's corrupted by ego. And so that is somebody who is constantly aware of that and then backed up by this wound of talent, recognition, and creativity. This is sort of somebody who never really wants you to pat them on the back every 5 minutes. Like that, because you could. And if they didn't believe it, then they don't fucking believe it and they don't care what you've got to say. Unless he achieved his goal, he doesn't care what anyone else thinks. And he could have won the game and he still wouldn't care. Like if whatever his goals were, they need to be met and he needs to be the one to recognize that. And he wouldn't care what anyone else says. And so these two coach comparison really is like an overall kind of view of um the problems really, because we can see Vossi, like, and he is the right energied person for that team, definitely. But in the same way, David is also the right energied coach for that team. And so the problem is too much emotion, not enough air, not enough innovative thinking, not enough fiery confidence because we're all weighed down. So I hope you found that as interesting as me. I am working on the comparison of these teams with obviously the ones missing that won't be playing next year, your Charlie Kerno, your Corey Durden, and I'm popping in the new players, which does make a huge difference, okay? It does actually make a huge difference. Let's see if I can get it up. Let's just have a quick look. I won't go fully into it because I will make another video about it. But you can see already that with the adding of Ben and Jagger coming back, we get this extra blue energy here, right? And then as we move down, look, we still have too much of this. And I wasn't a fan of Ollie Florent. So, and I'm not really a fan of these Camparellis because of that same purple energy, but we've still got Vossi. So potentially it'll be fine. Okay. Capricorns, you need some of them, but we did get Liam Reedy. Okay. Another Gemini, very helpful, right? I still think we need a bit more of this Leo energy. Okay. So I will be looking into the draft picks that we've been linked with and making my suggestions. Okay. We've gotten Will Hayward, another Scorpio. Also not a huge fan of that. All this, I don't really know. how this is gonna play out. I wanna see what the drafts have got. But particularly interesting, this lack of Scorpio in the 1995 team and this Scorpio energy in what will be the 2026 team. I'm a little bit okay with it, only because, Chris Davies is a Scorpio, and I do vibe with his energy, and I think that that's gonna be helpful. I think that that is just the evolution of time, moving from a a non-emotional based kinda team into an emotional based team. I do think that that is just gonna happen, just because the generations of people are shifting more into emotional and spiritual connection with themselves. And I think that the only way to handle that is to balance it out with a bit more air energy, a bit more of that innovative rebel, and a bit more of this faster mind kind of surface level energy, because the purple really weighs you down. Okay. So I will be putting together another video that includes the drafts that we are looking at, and we'll go through these new players and how they're going to fit in as well. And I think I might add the new coaching team, because I think that that's particularly important as well. So I hope you got some interesting information out of that. I certainly did. And yeah, I will be continuing to look into some more of these energies. And let's hope that we can balance out this team with a bit less heaviness. Okay. So as always, go Blues and stay weird.